it's never too late to start doing something that you know you should be doing. I'm going to be talking about alchemy and the ego because I feel like a lot of us, most of us, still really believe that, and rightly in a lot of ways, that we have not conquered, not killed, because we never want to do that, but not conquered and become in healthy control of our egos enough to do the things that we want to be doing consciously, like alchemy, like becoming an alchemist. You might say to yourself in a dialogue that you still are so ego-driven that how could you be an alchemist when you are so still in that lower consciousness? Well, I'd like to point out that, and this video is about, how to use the ego in a very healthy way in order to begin your studies and your practice of alchemy. I don't think there's any early or late or any time constraint on starting to become consciously aware and you use the practice of alchemy to reinforce that, to propel yourself into higher states of consciousness and higher states of being, and therefore be an example to others and promote the shift and the raising of the group consciousness. So here are a couple things really quickly. This is going to be a short video on what I feel like you could do if you still feel like you have such habitual ego-driven tendencies that would actually aid and help in your alchemical practice, in your practice of magic, in your practice of being mindfully, more consciously in control of what goes on in your life, of the circumstances of what happens. Well, the first thing that you have to do is trust. You have to trust that no matter how low and habitual your ego is, that if you at least are having the thought that you want to be an alchemist, that you want to become more conscious, then that is already taken over power, a position of power that's higher than your ego anyway, even if you have your habits, even if you still do things that you're ashamed of. One way that is very, very interesting, as the ego is our helper. It is our helper in our spiritual growth. It's necessary, is to realize that the ego is very emotionally driven, and emotions are a great tool in manifestation. Emotions are a deeply great tool in manifestation. So when we have our ego-driven tendencies that come up on us and we know the patterns, or even if we don't, and we just get swooped up by this emotional need for something, or emotional craving or want, or emotional response to things, what we can do is use that in the recipe of our manifestation. The thing that you need to remember when you are going to use this lower conscious egoic state is that you need to be able to harness it. Okay? And you know, the ego loves nothing more than to be caressed. It doesn't want necessarily to be overtaken. In fact, it would love for you to believe that you are it and it is you, which is not true. It is a function of you. It is a part of the two. If you were two parts, spirit and ego, it's one part. But it is not fully you. So harnessing it might take a tiny bit of concentration, but because it would rather be caressed, but it still likes to be, this is going to sound a little lewd, but rode like that, ridden, like ride me cowboy, you know, it likes a little bit of that. So what you want to do is when you begin to have a very selfish habitual response or tendency to, let's say that you this really injects itself into you through vanity or something, and you really like to feel gorgeous and beautiful and like that, you know, and you know that you're kind of ashamed of that, but that you would still like to begin your manifestation process. What you need to realize is that that is an emotion that you can actually inject into your manifestation. So stroke it a little bit, and then once you've gotten it to come near, mount the fucker. What that might look like would be if you have this kind of vain tendency to want to, maybe if you're a female, to doll yourself up, if you're a male, to just deck out, you know, gangster yourself, whatever. Why not just use that? Why not do that? Why not get to that place? Why not put on that shit and make yourself feel all, you know, and stop using the labels. I'm using it right now to deconstruct what we're doing, but don't be labeling vanity, because as soon as you start to become, one of the things that's the fatal flaw is as soon as you start to really negatively deprecate or deconstruct why you are a certain way, is when you go into the mode of powerlessness because you feel defeated, when in fact you are still just a learning human being and will always be. And if it's not that and you master that, it will be something else. So therefore, take that piece of you that is ego driven. Say you know a lot of sports stats, or say you really, okay, even to more hardcore things, say you really are addicted to something, and you know, what you could do is get to the space of where you feel good within whatever it is that you need to use, but still mindful enough, as high as you are or whatever, make the intention of still going into your practice. Now, I know this is pretty controversial, because I think that a lot of people really, really are going to say, you know, you really need to clear your shit. You need to eat healthy. You need to be healthy. Well, I think that's totally true. But the fact is, that really kind of secludes and fences off a bunch of people who are not ready to do that. So I would like to urge everyone out there to practice despite being in your shit show. Still practice. Why not try and do that? Because I do think that you'll find beautiful things no matter what. I think it's the thought that counts, which is like a quoted thing, you know, everybody knows that. The thought that counts. So, you know, say you need to get this drunk to be able to feel confident enough to make a true manifestation happen. I say go for it. I say if that's where you are and you would like to shift, I think going for it will help you with the shift. I really do. I feel like the negative self-talk and elimination, and when you exclude yourself from the group of conscious beings because you feel ashamed of something, some vain or arrogant or addicted part of yourself, I think that limits you from ever wanting to try to practice. So I'm going to say to all you motherfuckers out there, which I know you because I am and have been you, to continue to practice if you want good things to happen. Now, I know that this can fall into the wrong hands, and bad, selfish people can use this, and they do. That's why I know that this works. That's why I'm bringing it up, is that using this lower force ego, selfish-driven drive works, because it's how the United States is being absolutely manipulated and run by this type of practice, by people who, despite their disgusting, ridiculous, absolutely unconcerned with humanity sense of being, they are very powerful. Now, knowing that, if you take it to the space where you want not to be like that, but you recognize that you still have problems with ego, I want you to remember that that is magic. Magic is practicable, whether it's black or white, whether it's dark or light, whether it's good or bad, or I guess this side would be bad or good. You know, it's practicable. It's in fact equally effective. And yes, I do think in the long-term scope, if you're practicing negative selfish and negative and selfish black magic that causes harm to others. That in the long run, karma, a rule of the universe, will in fact destroy you. You will become self-consumed and you will be destroyed. I do believe that. That's why I do believe in the end we have no reason to worry. Light and good and the positive, like non-hurting, the group loving, the group consciousness of love will prevail no matter what, because it doesn't hold the kind of karma, which is a universal law in Hermeticism, cause and effect. You know, it doesn't hold that. And it doesn't hold it like black. It holds it, but what's going to happen is the cause and effect. If you do good, you're going to get good. So it's going to propel this this thing where happiness and love will continue to go forth, where dark magic does work, but eventually and selectively, individual by individual, slowly, they will become destroyed at one point or a million years from now. It's never going to be the most powerful, but it is as powerful. So go on and stop doing that negative self-talk. And no matter if you're addicted or vain or arrogant, or if you know that really you have these selfish tendencies, but do keep that, that, you want to work towards the better cause, you want to work towards feeling better. You want to work towards being more selfless. You want to work towards being more humble, and you want to work towards health, that you are welcome to practice. You are welcome to practice, even within your addictions, even within your vanity and your arrogance. And in fact, I would say, as I'm trying to tell you in this video, that you are encouraged to practice. So you could I would say, get to the point where you feel okay, no matter where you're at. If they say pray anywhere, no matter what's going on, you can practice anywhere. This practice is a prayer, in a way. And I encourage you to harness when you get to the emotion that you need to, when you're pretty enough, when you have had enough, self to outward and backward and forward injection of, affirmation, or when you are, in that high enough state. I know a lot of people get high or drunk, or high meaning any kind of substance, but I know people do that to feel better about themselves. So when you get to that state where you need to do that, stop feeling guilty, omit the guilt, and then just use the intention, go do your thing, and then remember that your intention was to, at one point, harness the energy when you finally feel good and practice the alchemy. So I really want y'all to know that, because I think that everybody does need to think for themselves. And when I started to gather information and I was starting to think for myself, I always tend towards a very aggressively empathic state. And when I say aggressively empathic, what I mean is at my core, I'm very aware of human suffering. And it really makes me even feel right now like I immediately feel all the pain, and I feel it, and it wells up this emotion in me because I'm so empathic. But at the same time, I'm very aggressive about how I feel toward people. I'm very aggressive, which is almost like a, contradiction in a way. And I aggressively feel that people need to be validated no matter what level that they're in. I aggressively feel that people need to know that they're okay no matter how fucked up they are. I aggressively believe in forgiveness because I believe that there's a lot of people out there who need to feel loved, and just because they do bad things doesn't mean that they are less deserving of love. It means they're actually more deserving because maybe they had less love. I do think that there are certain levels of selfishness and quote unquote evil, which is a very ambiguous word to me, that I could not I could not condone, or I could forgive on the ultimate sense, but I do not believe I do not believe deserve, and this is high up fucking evil, high up selfishness, that I'm not speaking to y'all out there, because y'all are part of that fucked up group who are trying to control, manipulate, and abuse and use others and children and things like that. I ain't talking to you. Y'all can fucking, grow the fuck up or be destroyed by yourself, because that's what's going to happen eventually. But with everybody else who has just the regular run of the mill, which is almost everybody else, kind of problems, there's no better time to start than now. And remember that alchemy is pretty simple. All it really is a shift in one's mind state. Now, the shift here that I'm talking about is the shift of being guilty about your problems, therefore having a much more clear palette from which to work from, which is the change your mind from guilt to acceptance. Now you have a clear palette of, oh yeah, I am pretty fucked up, but I'm still gonna fucking try, That's a clear palette from which to draw the energies, which you take those energies. You take maybe the emotion of feeling, you obviously feel a little bit like you got too much makeup on, but you look hot as fuck, And you take that emotion of feeling, it's a little obviously vain, and then you take the emotion of wanting not to be vain, but to help others. You combine it and you make a manifestation of something that you want, and the energy and emotion from kind of that vain, selfish standpoint where you feel so kind of superficially good will still enable you to attach it to your practice. And emotion is what is key here. We're talking about emotion being the thing that shifts you from being kind of a manifestor to huge, because your subconscious really, your ego really feeds off of emotion. Use those emotions, become the manifestor that that you are, despite all the negative self-talk and guilt that you have. Thank you so much for listening. Much love.